I would like to say you should all be smarter, but I don't know how to could be smarter. We don't know anything about how to improve intelligence, and as well, we don't really know anything about how to improve industriousness. Industri- but I can tell you that people who are industrious come up with a strategy for solving the problem that's ahead of them. If you want to know something about yourself, sit on your bed one night and say to yourself, you got to be in this line, you got to be this right, this no game, this. What's one thing I'm doing wrong? That I know I'm doing wrong. That I could fish. That I would fish. You meditate on that, you will an answer, and it won't be young you want. But it will be necessary. In this video, we'll explore some of his best kept secrets for maximizing focus and achieving long-term success, so that you can study smarter, not harder. Now, I often tell people to fix the thing you repeat every day. People tend to think over the result just trouble, right? You get up, you brush your teeth, you have your breakfast, you have your routines that you go through every day, where you do probably constitute 50% of your life. And people think, well, you're mundane and don't need to pay attention to them. That's not wrong. The thing you do every day, that's the most important thing you do. Hands down, all you have to do is do the arithmetic. Make an average of $35,000 decision every single day, which can eventually lead to decision fatigue, a state of mental overload that can impede the person's ability to continue making decisions. As well as this Lisa may explain, the more decisions you have to make, the more fatigue you develop, and the more difficult it can become. This mental exhaustion can lead to poor choices, procrastination, or even to a tendency to avoid decisions altogether. What effective way to reduce decision fatigue is by simplifying daily routines, so that planning meals in advance, maintaining a consistent routine, or establishing structural habit. Additionally, breaking down complex choices into smaller, manageable steps can make decision making feel less overwhelming. Happy individuals conserve mental energy for small, important tasks. I can tell you that people who are ambitious come up with a strategy for solving the problem that help them, and then they do whatever they can do, stick to the strategy and solve. For example, if you sat down today or tomorrow for a couple hours, 3 hours, and you fill in a Google Calendar, whatever you have happen to use with strategy for studying, and a list of when you owe your assignment, and do it all of them. All that when you sit down study, when you are in the position where you have to cram for 10 hours a day hopelessly right before you have now an important exam. It is a very effective way of studying, by the way. I mean, for example, people who cram for 10 hours, they say they are studying for 10 hours, but they are really because I can study for 10 hours. I don't have the power of concentration that would enable me to do that program. Without time, I can manage about 3 hours of intense intellectual activity before I'm ready. Then, I study research and frontiers in human neuroscience, found that by learning, where study sessions are spread out over time can be twice as effective as math learning. This approach enhances memory retention and recall by encoding information into long-term memory. Research consistently shows that students who spend out their studying perform better on assessment taken weeks later compared to those who cram. In addition to by learning, getting enough sleep plays a crucial role in learning and memory. According to the sleep deprivation hinders the brain's ability to create new pathways for recently learned information, making it harder to retain knowledge. And it's also the case that if you study and then sleep and then study and then sleep and then study and then sleep, you speed up when then you are much more likely to remember. It is also much more likely that you are much more likely to remember if you try to recall the material. And so highlighting in depth set of things isn't very useful with reading, closing the book, summarizing what you read without opening the damn book. This that's useful, and the reason for that is that you are practicing, remembering, and that's where you have to practice. If you practicing memorization, you have to practice remembering. You don't just go over and the thing over and over. That will help you with recognition, memory, but some better won't help you with recall memory. The best thing you can do is read and write every day, couple hours, every day. Write about things you find important and see if you can discover what you believe to be true. And that will build a foundation and it's unbelievably practical. Research published by Jackson V. Wastad from Renham Young University explore how reading literary fiction and a personal personality to understand others still knowledge theory of mind. This refers to the human capacity to recognize that others have beliefs and desires different from their own. In the study, participants were divided into groups and assigned different reading materials. Afterward, they took a test measuring their ability to perceive other emotions. The results showed that those who read literary fiction scored significantly higher than those who did not read at all. So what seems to happen in story is that they distill. So they watch people watch people, and then they tell story about what they see, but they leave a lot of the story, everything that's boring, hopefully. And then more and more story about starting get set up. I read it, and then maybe a great writer come along and write something really interesting. Wrote for character, information, and then you will say, well, that's fiction, and then you say, well, that's not true because fiction. But then maybe that's not right. Maybe that's not more than true. Because who wants the truth? The truth is mundane reality. You have already got that matter. What you learn is the distillation of interesting experience. And you might think, where is what is interesting? Well, if that says you don't know. That's the thing that's so cool. When you think about behavior, you tend to think about voluntary behavior, but motivational style will this has been alterated depending on the situation automatically response. So for example, when you food you right and you start to think about food and you start to organize your behavior towards the food at the end and you perceive the world that way your stuff body also prepare for food and so you food to think about motivated state of macro. According to an article from Condition Today titled The Scientific Truth Behind Fake It Till You Make It, mental imagery and actual perception say common neural circuits so they have different firing dynamics. This phenomenon is explained by his law, which states that neurons that fire together wire together. In other words, if you do something in association with something else, the shooting will get intellect at a neural level. This principle highlights the brain's ability to strengthen neural connection through repetition and association. For example, if someone repeatedly visualizes themselves speaking confidently in public, their brain starts to reinforce the same neural pathway used in actual public speaking, potentially improving their real-life performance. Even when you're just walking to where you want to go, if you're successfully walking there, your brain track what you're doing. The circuit that are activated while you are doing it, and if you want to doing reserve in the reserve you desire, then the dopamine flows those little neurons that are activated and make it them grow and flourish. And so, as you practice something that's working, the circuit that's activated as you are practicing is above in dopamine, and that's make it stronger, and that feels good. It's growth. It's part of positive motion, and so the positive motion move you forward, but also encourage you to develop a habit of that practice. And so one of the things I would really well say is don't make a habit of pursuing things that are good for you because you build that into you. That's what happens if you become addicted to something. You build a little muscle inside you. That's grow it. There's after one go. Despite everything else, not a good outcome. In order to withstand suffering, let's say your life has to have some meaning. Okay, well, and that's I mean a bunch of things. It mean that's part of the way that you overcome suffering is by making the suffering into something meaningful. And I don't mean that metaphysically. I mean it technically. You make a mistake, it cause you suffering. You learn something about it. You don't make that mistake again. And I started on a person writing with 250 participants, which offer that they was encouraged to embrace discomfort, failure, got a sense of achievement and realization growth possible. Actually, into the daily life cover to those who were simply script to focus on the task perceiving negative experience on the side of process is particularly motivating when you step as burn on delay and discomfort is immediate. This is life is suffering and this is like wireless something because you are wrong. Who cares? It makes you suffer. You who care. So what you know if you run out a little stream in the world. Action. You don't get what you want. If you choose you must into chasing why that's because you don't know what you don't know what you do, and you don't know what you're doing. It's like time for some negative motion. It indicates that you're wrong, and that's terrible in some sense because I mean not to learn requires pain. No, I don't believe that exactly because people who curious, and to go out and be curious and to learn new things that can be exciting. And so, what if seems to be that's their right of learning that's too fast and that's hurt you. That's what makes you cry. But if you get it right, just right, you're just opening enough novelty so that you can benefit from the possibility and give you a dopamine kick fundamentally. You can benefit.